1977 selection. Okay, we're on day 2 of the first week, and of course I'm glad to say that myself and John McAleese and quite a number of others were still there. Some had fallen out already and were RTU'd, sent back to their unit, some voluntary. But I'll just take you through the steps so you get the mindset of what was happening day in and day out prior to any training, before we come on to the actual meat of it all, the selection itself and how the 4 weeks worked. Your own personal motivation is only you can do it. You can't have other people. They can try to motivate you, but once you're there on your own, it's you. You have to get up and motivate yourself. 15 years in the SAS for me, I didn't need motivation, and there wasn't a day I didn't want to go to work. Can anybody else say that? However, I had to go through the hard parts to get there. So many volunteered and few were selected at the end. It's a hard course. Percentage-wise, eventually, maybe 10%, sometimes lower than that, sometimes higher than that, would get through. But you'd get into a daily routine, so I can give you some idea. And individually and as a group, you've got your own instructors. As I say, I can't quite remember how many people were in each one, but there was a mutual respect for each other, respect for the instructors. Don't forget, some of the guys on selection had done a number of years in the military. And of course, the rank structure didn't count. Yes, you still had your rank from your parent unit, the unit you came from, to do the SAS selection, but we were all equal to each other. There was no rank. The only person who had rank, in my opinion, was the instructor. And that's how it was. We were all the same. Normally you get a parade in the morning, and I don't mean shiny boots and stuff. What I mean is you get there, the instructors come along with the chief instructor. They'll tell you what's going on for the day. Have a quick look up and down, make sure, do a roll call, because as I say, each day there were people going, which meant in your room, my room, there was probably bed spaces empty. And that went on for the whole month. Once they were there, then they were gone. Okay, almost daily, somebody fell out. And don't forget, I said we had about 100 on our selection, which is quite a big one. We always got told what they expected from us, and the daily briefing was to tell you what you were going to do that day until, the first week was over. I was there on day 1, I was there on day 2. Would I be there at the end of the first week? Would I be there at the end of selection? I didn't know, but what I did know is I had to dig in, listen to what I was being told, and keep on the straight and narrow. Don't upset anybody, and do what you're supposed to do. And it wasn't easy. So, just to let you know that nowadays they've got all the gadgets. In our day, we didn't. They have Bergens nowadays with great big orange panels on there. They've got trackers, to find out where people are and stuff. We didn't have any of that, okay? Ours was what we stood up in, what we carried, and we went from point to point with just that. And of course, the instructors would be at certain rendezvous points, which we'll come on to later on. But just to say that all this stuff nowadays is making it much easier than it ever was when I did it. And the health and safety side of it these days, in my day, health and safety was in by 3 years, I think. It came in 74 and at 77, but actually it didn't bother us. It wasn't actually mentioned, and we just got on with it, and it worked fine. Then it would be map and compass. Okay, in the first week, if you couldn't read a map, There's no point in being on the SAS selection course. So they would take time to make sure people could read their maps. And don't forget, with that, we'd wander off into the hills of the Malvern Hills, Elam Valley, and hills around Herefordshire, not into the Brecons yet. And basically that was a day-to-day task. And when you went out, somebody would be the leader of your group. You'd be given a grid reference, you'd take them to it. When you got there, you'd swap over and somebody else would lead, give them a grid reference. You go to that grid reference, and the instructors are keeping an eye on everybody. You can't escape them. They're wiry, absolutely brilliant guys. Their job is to get us through selection if they can, and it's in their interest. So that was the day-to-day type of training to start with. There was no heavy weights. They came later on, obviously, but it was pretty much light order. We'd wander off into the hills of the Malvern Hills, Elam Valley, and hills around Herefordshire, not into the Brecons yet. And basically that was a day-to-day task. And when you went out, somebody would be the leader of your group. You'd be given a grid reference, you'd take them to it. When you got there, you'd swap over and somebody else would lead, give them a grid reference. You go to that grid reference, and the instructors are keeping an eye on everybody. You can't escape them. They're wiry, absolutely brilliant guys. Their job is to get us through selection if they can, and it's in their interest. So that was the day-to-day type of training to start with. There was no heavy weights. They came later on, obviously, but it was pretty much light order. And with that, it would actually get you used to, wearing the kit, your boots. Of course, when you started putting a Bergen on, even lightweight, and your belt kit, a lot of us, me included, you'd find that you'd be coming back with different types of marks on your body. And those marks would be from the straps maybe rubbing, your boots, maybe blisters. And that went on day to day. But the routine I got myself into, and John, before we go for a beer, is, for definite, is try to get the, whatever it was that was hurting. We used methylated spirits, and I thought it worked really well, especially on the blisters. But the daily routine at the end of the day, we'd go back, have a shower, do your feet if you've got the blisters and stuff, get the methylated spirits on them after you burst the blisters, put some powder on them, clean pair of socks, and then we'd disappear out for a beer somewhere. And that would be the type of daily routine that a lot of the lads did. And it's funny, the guys who did that, a lot of them passed. I can't blame the guys who stayed behind and said, oh, I'm going out, I'm going to bed early. Well, fine, everybody's different. But our routine worked for us, and I was never going to change that. So that was the way it worked, and it worked well. So as long as you were there on parade the next morning, there wasn't really a problem. And most people could go out and have a beer. I don't mean get shit-faced. I mean go out, have a beer, have a laugh with your mates, wind down, talk about what you've done, and then get ready for the following day. And if you're ready for the following day, whatever time that started, then that's all you could ask of, because that's what you were supposed to do. It's professionalism. It's you need to get out and socialize with your mates. You need to go out and have a beer. You don't need to, but I did. And a lot of the guys I did it with, they were the same. But it didn't hurt anybody. We were fit. Very fit, and nobody got that bad that they couldn't get up the next morning, because if that was the case, your mates aren't doing a very good job of keeping a check on you, and you're not doing a very good job of yourself for letting it let you down. It's going to be a long one. That month was long, and we'll talk through it day by day. So the first week is exactly what I've said. And again, day by day, there were people dropping out for different reasons. One or two were taken off by the instructors for different reasons. I'm not going into individuals, but that's what happens. And all of a sudden, your squad that you went out with is coming down and down, but that's happening with all the other guys as well. All it means is when you get back at night, you've got a bit more space because there's somebody there yesterday that isn't there today. And that's how I looked at it. Because we didn't have a lot of private space in those days. It was called a basher. It was a wooden Nissen hut. It looked like it was from the 40s, I don't know. But it had the amenities there for the shower. You could press any kit you wanted to and stuff. Easy. So the day-by-day routine was very important, and everybody got into their own daily routine. So I had to set the scene before we go into the training side, because really the first week was exactly what I said. Not very hard. Instructors doing what they should do, teaching rather than shouting, because they want you through that camp gate, and they'd like to see you with that berry on, the SAS berry, which is all, that's what it's all about. This hard work and effort is voluntary. No civilians, okay, were allowed to come on our course. Yeah, I think the minimum requirement was, doesn't matter which unit you came from, it's voluntary, that you would have had to done at least 3 years in a unit prior to coming on selection. So you've done basic training in places, you should be able to map read. Some people found it difficult, but they got the hang of it eventually, because a lot of people didn't do it them days. You ask anybody this day and age, what's the difference between grid north and magnetic north? And they'll look at you and think about it. Do you know what it is? I'm not about to tell you, but if you can't even do that, forget selection.